Short-term memory does have other limitations though. One of these is the serial position effect and the other is interference. I've got a video on the serial position effect, but I will briefly describe it here and then ask you to watch the linked video. Serial position effect is when if you have any items that happen in a sequence in a certain order and you're trying to remember all of them, you're going to be least likely to remember the stuff in the middle. You will recall the first few items on the list very well, and you will recall the last few items on a list very well. Recalling the first few items is called the primacy effect. Recalling those last few items is called the recency effect. So primacy, sort of like primary, like first, and recency because those were the most recent that you experienced. Now, it is the primacy effect, not the primary effect, like many people have written on tests in my classes before. So be careful of that one. What we're looking at here on the graph is our x-axis is position in sequence, meaning when you move from left to right, you're starting with the first item in a series, second, third, fourth, etc. We don't have all the numbers exactly labeled here, but just know we're starting at the beginning of the list and moving towards the end. And then our y-axis going up and down is the percentage of the words that you recalled. So you see for the primacy effect, the first kind of third of the graph is where that line for number of words recalled is super high, maybe in the high 80s or close to 90, therefore maybe the first item in the series. And then for the recency effect, we have the line pretty close, maybe let's say it's in the 75 to 80 range, something like that. And then in the middle, it dips down way below 50%. We're not remembering much of what happened in the middle. There are different reasons explaining why this happens. So the primacy effect probably happens because we have had the most time to rehearse those items. By the time we get to the end of the list, we have probably already been, if we know we're going to be tested on this memory-wise, if we know we're trying to memorize it, we've already been rehearsing the first few items. And by the time we get to the end of the list, those have been rehearsed most. The rest of them haven't had time to be rehearsed. The recency effect happens because those items are just still in short-term memory. It maybe hasn't even been 15 or 30 seconds yet because we just got to the end of the list. So we still remember those pretty well because they are still in short-term memory and don't need rehearsing. We tend to forget the stuff in the middle probably because we were rehearsing those first few items for our primacy effect. And because of that, during the middle, our attention was not on the middle items, okay? Our attention was on the first few. So there are ways you can get around the serial position effect. One way you can do this is by changing up a sequence so that one that would normally happen in the middle is now like number one of a new sequence to you. And your textbook talks about how you can do this by highlighting. So if you have a list of 10 things, let's say you highlight the first few in pink, you highlight the next handful in green, and then you do yellow and blue. So you're just doing 2 or 3 items in each color, and your mind is going to perceive those first few pink items as their own list. It's not going to be a list of 10 anymore. Your mind is going to process this as 4 lists. So you can easily remember 2 or 3 items, right? You have way more buckets than that in your short-term memory, as we looked at before. We don't even really need to do any chunking there. So your first 2 or 3 items on the list is its own list. And then when we start highlighting in the next color, our mind sees that as, okay, number 1, we're starting a new list. And so that way there's no sagging middle of 10 plus items where we forget the middle 5 or whatever. We only have a handful of each of those to remember. The video I'm going to link has some other tricks as well that link up well with some of our future chapters we're going to study. So I highly encourage that one because it will help you study chapters 6 and 8 coming up in the next couple weeks.